Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie. And today I'm speaking with Jessie-Sierra Ross, founder of the Straight to the Hips Baby and author of Seasons Around the Table. Jessie-Sierra is also a former ballerina, and I love, among other things, how she has translated the dancer life into the food life. Welcome, Jessie-Sierra. Always nice to see you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to meet with you again and talk. I can't wait to talk more about this book.
Well, we will get to the book, but I have to ask, how did you go from being a ballerina to the foodie lifestyle?
It's a very good question. It's an interesting question, right? Because when you think of ballet dancer and food, it's not, necessarily something you relate to each other just because of the strenuous nature and the pressure of professional ballet. But I love food. I have always loved food. I started cooking at my mother's side at 6 or 7 years old, just fascinated by not only the chemistry of putting food together and the sort of food is love aspect, but also just spending quality time with my family. And so that passion for food continued to grow with me, even if I couldn't always indulge. My daily staples were yogurts, oranges, and bowls of chicken soup, but that didn't stop me from the occasional cocktail and slice of brie. But after I retired from professional dance and started my family, I realized that I had a lot of time on my hands, and I have just simply adored home entertaining for as long as I can remember. I love flowers and creating beauty for my tablescapes and these amazing menus. And so I started Straight to the Hips Baby, the blog, as a way to dive into that passion, but also to have an outlet to the outside world because I was the mother of two small children. And I needed a project. I needed something to do to communicate with the outside world because I had two little kids babbling in my ears all the time. And it just took off, and it's just developed into this amazing business of food photography and styling, of blogging, of magazine articles, TV work, and now Seasons Around the Table.
Wow. Is that just like the ultimate goal that you didn't actually realize that you had until you had it?
Completely. I was just saying to my husband the other night, not in my wildest dreams would I first think that I would be in food. I always thought I'd be at the ballet bar, or in my tutu. And also, ballet is a silent art. Dance is a silent art. We don't talk. And now I talk for a living. It's hard to get me to shut up. So it is such a wild dream, but it's such a beautiful goal that, I had set, I want to say almost 10 years ago that I really wanted to see this through to a cookbook. And now I would love to see this through to a TV series. You got to keep setting those goals.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did the book come about?
It was a really interesting process. So, as I mentioned before, I've been doing these sort of lush floral inspired menus and tablescapes in my food photography, which is known for being very light and bright. And I have a lot of from scratch cooking. I don't believe in shortcuts. So, I had started developing this audience, this following on all of my platforms. And I joined up with a streaming channel at one point, and they had a publisher approach them and they said, "Hey, we have this woman who's working out in the Berkshires. She does all of this beautiful sort of food and drink." And I spoke with Schiffer Publishing, and I got to tell you, my knees were knocking. I'd never done anything like this before, and they had an idea concept for me, and I said, "I like that concept, but what about this concept?" And I counter pitched with what I saw. There were elements of their pitch that I was like, "Yeah, that could work. That could dovetail into what I'm thinking." But I gotta try. I gotta see if they'll go for it. And they did. And Seasons Around the Table is really about effortless entertaining and seasonal cooking and tablescapes. And I wanted to bring the beauty of the garden as well as the seasonal ingredients in my area to the table, to the kitchen, so that other people could host and enjoy these experiences with friends and family.
In what way do you think your Jewish background has impacted what you do with food?
I can't say that food equals love is unique to our culture, but it is paramount. I think that, we always have this feeling of mother or grandmother love from, eat a cookie, blah, blah, blah. It's my Jewish background is unique. I grew up a conservative Jew. My father was not Jewish, my mother was, but I was raised Jewish and very much identify as a Ukrainian Jew. And my father was actually a World War II refugee and had gone through some pretty traumatic and terrible times, but one of which was not having enough food at a very tender age. And so in my house, when we had food, it was not only nourishing, it was not only um, something that was an art that could tap into memory, but it was a celebration because of all those hardships. So for me and learning my mother's family's recipes for kugel and blintzes, and I've never shared my blintz recipe. Don't ask me; it's not going to leave the family. But I'll share everything else. And Carla, these are my earliest memories, and they are the ones that I am passing on to my children because food culture is culture. It is our culture. For every amazing event that we have, whether it's weddings or brisses or namings, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, we eat. If there's ever a time of sorrow where we have to gather, we eat. If there's ever a time where we're just getting together to really connect. And in these trying times, that is happening more and more. We eat. We eat to remember, we eat to connect, we eat to nourish, we eat to love.
Yes. It's one thing to have a conversation, but to have a conversation over food, I think just really adds warmth, that extra ingredient to any conversation.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than a little coffee, a little cake, and a little kibitz.
What is your favorite Jewish food? And you're probably going to say the blintzes that you cannot share, which is fine.
Oh, goodness. Blintzes are very much up there. I will give you a hint, though. I am a salty blintz lady. I'm not a sweet blintz. We are very specific in there's a family story because my maternal grandparents, they came from separate sides of Ukraine, their families. So one side like sweet, one side like salty. The grandpa would come over and put some salt into the blintz mixture. My nana would taste it whoop, and put sugar into it. So, that was our, our growing up. Um, for Jewish recipes, I think as I've gotten older, I actually appreciate the more savory bits, like blintzes and kugels and things of that nature were definitely my favorite as a kid, and they still are very close to my heart. But now I like chicken livers with onions, on good crackers. I mean, I'm turning into a bubby. I love it. I love it. I love smoked meat from Montreal, which is a very unique Canadian Jewish delicacy. Good old fashioned simmer all day chicken soup, right from like a whole chicken where you started. You add sweet potato and carrots and celery and onions and everything in there where it boils all day. And now I I crave my mother's stuffed cabbage leaves, and I have never been able to replicate it. She's since passed, and I never got the recipe, but I still tinker, trying to figure it out. And it's memory. It's 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 my culture. It's my roots, and it's something that I strongly embrace. And I think for so many of us, we can differ in backgrounds, we can differ in the amount of religious adherence that we have, we can do different types of Judaism. We all come together around the common plate, around the common food culture. We just love food.
And it sounds to me like your book is just a celebration of all of the food from everywhere in every season, etc.
Yeah, and it's different flavors, different cuisines of the world, different influences, but I was fortunate enough to have a trip to Israel during the middle of the recipe development process, and there's an entire menu absolutely inspired by Middle Eastern, Israeli, and Mediterranean cuisine. Where else are you going to get the black lentil salad with mint and cucumber and tomato with za'atar? Or, for me too, it's the Slavic, the Ashkenazi Hanukkah recipes of the onion and potato latkes, and I created a pear and apple compote. Or going to my dad's side of the family in Ukraine, a Slavic style cucumber dill yogurt salad. I mean, these are all flavors that once you taste them, you will be transported back. You may not know who used to make this, why they used to make this, but it will be familiar to you.
It sounds to me like you're choreographing recipes.
Oh, I like that. Yes, choreographing recipes, but also food experiences because we can cook and we can serve, but there's also another element. There's the entertaining part of it, which is, gathering people to the table, creating beautiful tablescapes for people to enjoy with flowers and little objects of art, and bringing out pieces of history, like your grandmother's china, or I love bringing out my great grandma Rodman's huge crystal compote dish, which you can't really use anymore, but I stick a bunch of fruit and flowers in there. I bring her to the table. It's a way to remember, and it's a way to really enjoy what you have with the people you love.
I love that idea of not just bringing the food and the memories, but the decor that reminds you of people who have passed. I think that's an extra level of a way to honor them.
Absolutely, and I think as a generation, um, we have inherited quite a bit of heirlooms, right? But we often think that they're only for super special occasions, or oh, I remember grandma bringing out, the par of china, for different elements for that salmon dinner or whatnot, and it ends up staying in the closet because you may not live that life anymore, or you may not have those occasions. This book is about creating those occasions because it doesn't have to be a special occasion to make a special meal. You can have those elements and remember and use and really enjoy your time with your friends and family with a beautiful table and a beautiful meal.
What are some simple tips that people can do to entertain more better without the stress of it?
Very good question. I emphasize in Seasons Around the Table streamlining and modern home entertaining techniques. And for me, through trial and error of, being a young mother hosting to being, someone who hosts 16 people on the regular basis, it's about realizing what's important and what's not. So what's important is to focus on the flavors, focus on the food, and obviously the guests and your family and friends. But you don't have to serve 5 or 6 courses. We don't need to do that anymore. You do not have to have a piece of silverware for each course. It's okay. You don't need to do that. You don't have to have matching plates. It's okay. They can be mismatched. It's all about getting people to the table. So for me, what I like to do is when I'm planning a menu, let's just say for 8 people, that's very reasonable. We all know 8 people we want to dine with. And what you do is you start with your menu plan. You say, okay, what's the one thing I really want to focus on? Is it going to be the main dish? Maybe I want to make a roast turkey. Maybe I want to make a prime rib. Excellent. Or maybe it's a really fancy dessert. Maybe we want to make a flourless chocolate cake with whipped cream and flowers. Good. Choose one thing to put a ton of your energy, your focus on. And by a ton, I mean something under an hour, because in my world, I'm too busy to do much else. And supplement with simpler recipes. But simpler doesn't mean less flavorful. For me, if we're going to go with that roast chicken, that means we're going to do a beautiful smashed baby potato that's roasted and crispy with olive oil, dill, and maybe some garlic in there. We'll add maybe a compote that's easy. You just throw everything into a pot and let it simmer. In a fresh green salad. If you're going to make a tremendous dessert, again, you circle back and you say, all right, well, I'm going to use the sous vide to make that prime rib. I'm not even going to bother with the oven. And then maybe I'll make a scallop potato, or if I'm going to be kosher that day, I'm going to make a beautiful like green bean sauteed with olive oil and herbs. It's all about your time management and expectations, because the thing is, if you can create a stunning dish at the table and everything lines up, your guests will be astounded, because we don't do this anymore and we should. It takes very little to make this huge impact.
I love this idea of like the showcase dish, whichever course it is, and then supplementing it with other food that's going to complement that.
Mhm.
Because to me, that's like easy, right? Because if it's not easy, most people aren't going to do it anyway.
Very true. Very true. And you can add to that even by creating, I would say, unique food experiences, but from the moment my guests walk in the door, they know it's an event. And I don't mean like sparklers and fireworks everywhere, but I hand them a cocktail. I welcome them in with a very simple Aperol spritz. It could be a wintertime Aperol spritz with cranberry juice and a spiced simple syrup. The moment they sit down with that cocktail, they know something's about to happen. So it's those small touches for maximum impact that I really emphasize in my cookbook.
You've given some examples of like really good, simple ways to make the entertaining experience memorable. Can you give me an example of like an over the top thing that you've done?
I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. Next to Passover, I love entertaining for Passover as well. But for a tablescape one year, I created, and it's actually, I recreated it for the book. I created multiple floral centerpieces and then simple centerpieces using a cupcake stand where I put different fruits like apples and pears and pomegranates with big, bold flowers and wheat stalks. I've used that idea for Rosh Hashanah before to really bring some life to the table. And I took out all of my vintage china from every great aunt, great grandma, grandmother, aunt, everything I'd inherited. And I put one place setting per family member. And I all these golden ornaments, like pieces of art and crystal and stone, little noshes on the table in marble bowls. There were dates, there were chocolates, there were crackers. I wanted it to be over the top, festive, abundance. For me, the lushness, the abundance of the harvest season just speaks to my heart. So that table state was definitely my favorite, and it's in the book. So I was really happy to recreate that and also bring my relatives to the table in a way to their featured. For meals, oh, I over the top. Let's see. Oh, you're gonna love this. Um, a brown sugar caramel bourbon, caramel sauce over a vanilla, no, bourbon. I think it was a cinnamon bourbon cheesecake with candied pecans. And I made that for Valentine's Day. I make it a lot for special dinners. I'll sometimes make it for birthdays. It's over the top. It's delicious. It's infused with that delicious, sweet, rounded bourbon flavor and vanilla and brown sugar. And, it looks really impressive, but you can do this. You can do this. If I can do this, a self-taught former ballerina turned cook who gave up her point shoes for an apron can do this. You can too. And it's a showstopper. Your guests don't have to know unless they ask or you are nice enough to tell them that it is easy peasy. I mean, it's again done in under an hour.
Amazing. So is that the recipe you're going to share? Or do you have one that's a little bit easier and more user friendly?
I have one that I think is more applicable to every day, especially during the fall and winter. And it speaks to my heart of beautiful, clean flavors that are balanced and rounded. I am a New England gal. I'm a Bostonian. I grew up, in Fall Central. And we went apple picking, and I still take my kids apple picking. And one of my favorite desserts is an apple and pear crumble. Now, crumbles are delicious. They're humble. They're easy. This crumble is unique because we are going to use chopped Bartlett pears and sliced Honeycrisp apples. And you just sort of toss them with a little bit of cornstarch, a little bit of lemon juice. You put them into a baking pan and you top with this crumble that's made out of flour, butter, sugar, and a little bit of cinnamon, and you crumble it with your hands, almost like a pie dough. So it has all the flavors of an apple pie, but it's literally a quarter of the work. You sprinkle it on top, put it in the oven, becomes brown and bubbly. The fruit melts and creates its own sauce. And it's warming. It's stick to your bones food. This is the food that I feed those that I love. And you top it with a little bit of vanilla ice cream. Oh my gosh. Heaven. Have it for breakfast, even better. Just don't tell my husband I do that. It disappears so fast in my house, partially because of me.
Or it's going to love, though, the main ingredient anyway.
Always. Always.
Do you, and you've done all these wonderful things. Is there like a cooking goal that you have?
I want to keep making these experiences. I want to keep enjoying these experiences too. And I think that's the important part is that oftentimes we think we're in the kitchen cooking, we're, tied to that stove and everybody else is in the dining room enjoying themselves. For me, it's about continuing to keep the quality going, keep the elegance, the fancy, not fussy mentality, but also to make sure that I get into that dining room to enjoy that supper and my friends and family just as much as they are enjoying it. And so I will continue to work. and streamline and figure out what I can do. And for me, that's the ultimate goal for my food point of view. For my food content and my career, I want to keep making books. I want to have a TV show. Um, I want to travel around and meet people and show them how they can do this themselves. So that's my long-term plan.
Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I'm so excited for you. Where can
Thank you.
people learn more about you and your new book?
Absolutely. So you can find more about me at straight-to-the-hips-baby.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter on that website. It's called Jessie-Sierra, The Last Bite. If you search on Substack, you'll find me too. You can buy my book at Barnes& and Noble, Target, Amazon.com, or Walmart. I also have a page on my website, straight-to-the-hips-baby.com/seasons, where you can find the book.
Excellent. And what piece of food for thought do you want to leave everyone with today?
Don't let perfection, the feeling that you need to be perfect, stop you from throwing that party. It does not need to be perfect. Even if you're getting takeout Chinese from your favorite place, bring out the china. Let's do it. Let's bring out those nice plates, bring out the goblets, open that nice wine, celebrate life with the people you love because life is just too short.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jessie-Sierra Ross, for joining me. Thank you for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and or your favorite podcast channel. And go to jewishjournal.com/podcast to read the articles and get the recipe that goes with each episode. And you can learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, bon appetit.